Junkman's Daughter is the creation of Pam Majors, and she opened the store in 1982 in the neighborhood of Little Five Points. Her parents were junkers. They had their own junk store in the Lakewood area of Atlanta called Gavron's.
The only thing I know about the family store was that it was like a salvage business, and they purchased businesses that had shut down. They would buy whatever was left and put it in there. So she inherited all the merchandise, and she was going to open a store, but she wanted to add her flavor to it. She needed an income.
So in 1982, she looked for a great location, and of course she needed to find something affordable. So she discovered the area of Little Five Points.
It seemed to be not very popular, like it had been a thriving business district at some point, but it had sort of, people had moved on and lost interest in it. There were very few people coming here. But it was always described to me as a really dangerous or really scary or really funky, cool place.
The time was a little bit transitional. It was empty. There wasn't a lot going on in Little Five Points. But she saw these wonderful buildings, and she found a little spot on Euclid Avenue, and she decided that this was a great spot for her to open the original Junkman's Daughter. So despite the fact that Little Five Points was an uninhabited neighborhood, she moved in, and she brought some merchandise from her parents' store, but she also realized that there was a niche for stuff that wasn't available in Atlanta. So this was 82, so it was before the internet and before everything else. So there was a lot of kids that were into punk rock at the time, a lot of artists and musicians, and they were looking for merchandise that they couldn't get anywhere else.
Back then it was always the cool destination to go to. If you wanted something interesting, you would go around to the Junkman's Daughter, and back then they had vintage and punk rock, the beginning of punk rock clothes and off the beaten path stuff that you couldn't find at like Macy's or anywhere else.
There was a desire for this merchandise, and she got in a good spot at a good time when the rents were still cheap, and from there the business just grew and grew and grew.
I think that's when this neighborhood really came into its own, and business really boomed. A lot of more interesting shops opened up, and a wider variety of people came here.
After 9/11 and the internet, it became really difficult to find items that were not always available, because people had computers and they would get online and they'd be like, oh, I can get that there and it's cheaper and there's no shipping and I don't have to pay tax, or I don't have, and so that really put a damper on retail. Retail became very difficult.
Well, that certainly hurt us. People would come here and look for things they liked and then not buy them, thinking they could buy them cheaper online. And maybe they could. But I think it's always a gamble when you buy things over the internet. You don't know exactly what it's going to be until it shows up.
The business suffered a little bit. Our sales went down, so we had to adjust because we just weren't selling as much. So we cut down on the staff, and we had to become more cautious with our buying and look at numbers more than just buy anything we want, which is kind of what Pam loved to do. Then in November of 2016, sadly, Pam passed away, and it was a very super sad time for us.
It was really sad that when she passed away, we knew she was sick. She'd been sick for a while, but she had surgery, and everybody thought, oh, this is great, she's going to bounce back, and she might not be able to do what she was doing before, she might retire. But when she died, it was a shock. It was like we found out and none of us were expecting it. No one expected it.
It was really a surprise to everyone. And a lot of people over the decades had gotten to know her because a lot of people have worked here and moved on. and spread out all over the United States. But there was a large show of sympathy and affection when she passed from people that we had all forgotten about, but they hadn't forgotten about this place and they hadn't forgotten about her.
And we didn't know what was going to happen. I knew that she'd left the store to her son, and so we were all kind of just, you know, holding our breath going, okay, he's going to come here and take over the store, and how is that going to work? Because he's been in LA for so long, he's got a different idea of how things should be. And it was really rough, but he's been here now since, you know, for 2 years on and off, and he's falling into the smoothness of how things run here, and it's working out. We're making money, you know, not like the 90s, but we're still open and we're still making profit.
So Moss Mills taking over the store was just another chapter in Pam's legacy. I think that she would be proud of the fact that he decided to keep Junkman's daughter going.
I'm excited about the new direction for the store because there's a new owner of the store now. And he came in here and made a lot of really drastic changes in the business, some of which we were thrilled about, some of which we hated. But it is good to shake things up because with a fresh pair of eyes, he's addressed a lot of things that we had just taken for granted. And we've been here for so long that we just sort of become blind to problems that slowly built up over time.
She taught me to be a little more laid back, you know, and mostly, you know, it was just that she was a good person to work for, and now I'm hoping that Moss will be a good person to work for going forward.